Hey folks, it's Andrew from Gemba Red, and today we're going to be taking a look at if we can use computer filters on our LED panels to extend the life. Now theoretically this could help because we want to reduce the amount of dust getting into the panels. The dust can get onto the LEDs or on the circuit boards of the drivers, and that could help short them out. That could cause them to collect condensation and humidity, or kind of overheat them. So dust can be very problematic for a lot of electronics. That's why they make these kind of filters for computer fans. Now the only downside I can think of is that adding too many filters or too fine of a filter will restrict the airflow, and that'll actually increase the temperature of the LEDs and of the panel, and obviously too much temperature could diminish the life of the LEDs. So it's kind of a trade-off. Do we want the filtration to protect from dust, but too much filtration will hinder the airflow and cause overheating of the panel. So that's one of the trade-offs whenever you're selecting filters for any kind of system, is that you want a fine mesh to obviously filter out the fine particles of dust, but when it becomes too fine and too restrictive of airflow, then that can mess up how your system was balanced. So as manufacturers, we know we're creating a certain amount of heat and power that we have to manage, and then we use heat sinks and fans and other thermal dissipation designs to regulate that kind of heat to make sure it reaches like a steady state that's good for the panel and safe for the user. So if we start haphazardly slapping on filters on the devices that weren't designed for it, then again that could cause an imbalance in how much heat is produced and not enough cooling. But anyway, as you can see, like this one's very dark and this one has a little bit more transparency, so maybe this one has better airflow. So there's going to be some trade-offs of selecting the right ones. But I did do a quick test on two different overclock panels, one without any filters and one with this filter. And we found only kind of a 6-degree difference. I'll put a picture on the screen of our infrared camera. And, it's about 6-degree Celsius difference, which isn't too bad. It definitely is a measurable difference that you get more warm with the filter on. But I would say, it's not too bad for our, overclock panels and our full body panels to put the filter on. As long as your ambient air, again, you have to kind of balance if your ambient air is relatively cool, so it's pulling in relatively cooler air. If your ambient air is very hot, then it becomes double a problem, because then you're restricting the airflow. And then if your ambient air for some reason is very warm, you like to keep your house warm, or the room you're in just gets really warm, then you've got a double whammy because, your ambient air decides how cool it is when it's pulling in that air. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about a couple degrees with our LED panels because they're very robust, and LEDs kind of have an operating range of, you don't want it too cold or you don't want it too hot. And really, as long as they're within that range, then you should reach that 50,000 hour rating that they're meant for. I think there's kind of some of a myth that, if it's a couple more degrees and every percent temperature increase is a percent of loss of life to the LEDs. And, that doesn't really make sense. It's got an operating range. And even if you're on, a slightly higher end of that operating range, you're still going to be good, for those 50,000 hours. Maybe a better idea is just not to add these filters onto the panel itself. Just have a separate, standalone filter for that room, or, make sure you're changing your filters if you've got, central air, that you change your filters every couple months and make sure your air is very clean and dust free, and think about your different environments. So not every environment should need this. And again, think about if your ambient temperature is already high, you might not want to do this because then it'll bring up the temperature even more. And so that's it. This kind of came to mind because I did see a recent unit that had a bunch of dust bunnies and had a bunch of dust in it. And it's really not, a manufacturer's defect. It's going to be, a defect of the environment that it's in that's going to cause it to fail prematurely. So we got to watch out for that. If we want to really get the full 50,000 hours, you want to make sure your device is in a good environment, low dust, low, not too low humidity, because that actually creates static electricity, but, a moderate amount of humidity, and not too high of a temperature, not too low of a temperature. So it's got to be in a nice range for all those factors. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for tuning in.